You are feeling disheartened. That you are somehow not enough. Set your heart ablaze.
We shall be discussing the anime that has completely surprised me in the space of 6 episodes. Yes, you guys heard me right. 6 episodes, and I'm already hooked on the anime, and I'm already having to talk about this particular anime because this anime is called I Made Friends with the Second Prettiest Girl in My Classroom. And within the first 6 episodes, and keep in mind, I'm going to tell you this, guys, honestly, right now. I watched the first episode, kind of skimmed through it, and I didn't plan on really watching it. But then I was like, all right, let me lock in yesterday and let me watch the rest of the episodes. And I got hooked. And I would compare this to one of the best romance animes I've seen. And personally, for me, this is the best romance anime I've seen since quintessential quintuplets. And we all know how much I love my quints. But episode 1, we have Umi, Maki, and Yu's introductions. Umi and Yu are best friends. Maki's the main guy of the story, the kind of like loner type of loser type of thing. Everybody, like, is feeling sorry for him. And then we see also Umi and Maki kind of becoming more friends and bonding, considering that Maki is more of a guy that really stays home. And then Umi kind of takes an interest to some of the stuff that he likes, especially the shark movies, which I want to say this, didn't expect like sharks to get referenced in the show. And then we find out that Umi also loves playing video games, and then they end up having, like a good gaming session together. They actually start planning out their first date together, and towards the end of the episode, we see Umi standing with a guy, and we're like, all right, who's this guy? And it feels like she's about to get asked out. And that's basically just the story of the first episode. Like Umi, Maki's, and Yu's introductions. We get Yu, how he is at home, his home life. A mom working. The only day he has really free to himself at home is on Friday. So it kind of feels like they're going to be hanging out on a Friday, considering he's going to be free. And then we kind of have this confrontation between Umi getting possibly asked out by the guy. And then episode 2 begins. Umi does get asked out by the guy, but Umi rejects. The guy asks if she has a boyfriend, she's talking to someone, and Umi says no to both times. Meanwhile, Yu and Maki and one of Yu's other friends are all watching the confession, and then after, Yu gives her number to Maki so they can stay in touch and become more friends. And then next thing we see is Umi and Maki on their so-called first date together, and they spend more time bonding with each other, like hanging out, going to the mall, going to arcades, seeing a movie, like doing all these first date type of things. But then Yu and her friends end up seeing Maki by himself. Well, he's supposedly by himself at the time, but Umi's backpack is there, and so Yu's like, hey, why don't you and your friend join us? But then Maki's like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I can understand how Umi is feeling with how Yu is and how she deals with her personality, because Yu's personality is over the top and is in your face. And I can understand why Umi and Maki are kind of more like reserved and why they get along so well, because they are both similar when it comes to that sort of like two-piece in the pod. So Maki ends up rejecting their offer and ends up still hanging out with Umi. And then Yu, Umi, and Maki all hang out after at his place because Yu is feeling bad that she made Maki upset, but then they end up making together. Yu actually ends up, asking Maki to hang out, and he ends up, they all end up, and they ended up all making up together, and then, it continues on. Episode 3, the trio is bonding. I call them the trio because it's basically a trio at this standpoint. They're all bonding at lunch, talking about, food. They try some of Maki's home cooking, end up hanging out back at this place after Yu's like, I want to try some of your pancakes. So she brings along Umi, or Umi joins them as well, and they end up trying his pancakes. Umi starts to realize that, maybe you and Maki are getting a bit too close, and she starts fearing that she may be losing Maki to you. And then you, at the end of their hangouts, ask Maki to end up hanging out with her on a Friday, but Maki stands up for you, and Maki's kind of like, no, I already had these plans set for Friday, obviously with Umi, and then Umi goes back and kind of flicks him on the head, and Maki's like, what was that for? And Umi's like, I'll see you on Friday. So they ended up hanging out on Friday, and Umi and Maki hang out, end up staying up, and they're not really like going out. They're staying at Maki's place, and Umi and Maki end up having a good time playing games together. Ordering some food. They go into his room to read some manga, which is also another thing that they're both interested in. Umi ends up falling asleep. Then Maki falls asleep. Then we have Maki's mom finding them both asleep. Umi ends up staying the night. They both have the conversation after Umi ends up taking a shower. They realize that, there's a lot more to them. They have more things in common. Umi ends up staying the night. Maki ends up sleeping on the couch. Then I think next to his he ends up sleeping on the couch. And one of the things that they were discussing in this episode 3, is about the fact they're still hiding their secret friendship from you, who does not know that they're still hanging out, because we're gonna find out. Let me not get ahead of myself. We're gonna find out. Episode 4, the school festival reps are decided. Umi and Maki are chosen. They kind of do a lottery style, but Umi kind of cheats by saying that she drew him, even though she technically didn't draw him, after hearing most of the class talking crap about Maki. And you heard that too. You actually ended up standing up for Maki in front of the class and ended up apologizing because she didn't want the class to just be separated. She wanted the class to be one. They picked the design to do an anime character design, based off of after Yu's drawing, and Umi was just like, well, Yu is very good at drawing, so Umi's starting to feel more and more that she's starting to lose Maki to you. They end up trying to take a break, but end up, they kind of take a break because they were both meeting with each other, because they're both the school reps. So Maki's like, all right, Umi, you can go take a rest. You can go hang out with the friends, but Maki ends up spending time alone, missing him. So Umi comes up with an excuse, goes to see Maki, and then towards the middle, towards the end, Yu ends up finding out, and then Umi has a decision to make, because we kind of get a little backstory of why she kind of kept it a secret, but she says she doesn't really want to talk about it. Maki ends up going to comfort Umi, and then at the end of the episode, we have Yu, Umi, and Maki all talk it out with 2 girls from Umi and Yu's past. And then we end up finding out the reason why Umi was so scared of Maki being lost to you, because for a majority part of time when she was in middle school, a lot of the girls that would start talking to her would only then end up talking to you, because they were trying to get close to you, and they wanted to be in the position that Umi was to you, being her best friend. So Umi started to get growing hatred, but she still also loved her, that she was her best friend, but she also could see how her personality was just like that, and she was getting upset with the fact that people were rejecting her to be with, go hang out with you. And there was an instance that they showed where Umi's like, all right, I got 4 tickets to go see a movie, we can have you join us. And then the 2 girls that she was talking to end up rejecting her just to go hang out with you. So that makes her feel even more. And then the 2 girls ended up saying why they did, but it's still not a very good reason. And then we get more of Umi's backstory. Like I said, Maki goes to Umi after Umi says, hey, I need a second to breathe. Give me a second to chill out. Maki and Umi then talk about it. And, Maki actually praises her for standing up for herself and, telling the truth and holding this in for so long. And they end up talking about deciding to take a break, but Yu stops them because she knows that they enjoy seeing each other, and Yu doesn't want to be a selfish person and keep Umi all for herself. So they end up still hanging out with each other. Yu hangs out with them on their secret hangouts after having them also hold hands while going through the whole like school rep thing that they were doing, the school festival that they were doing, but ending up, like having a hangout at his place. And then Umi goes up to you and is like, hey, I still want to hang out with Maki on Fridays. Can I at least have Maki for Fridays? And then you can have me for the rest of the day. You ends up agreeing. And then we get one of my favorite things to happen. You and, Umi and Maki are end up walking back to Umi's place. Umi asks Maki, does he like her? He says, in what type of way, which is kind of a cop-out answer. And then Maki asks Umi, do you like me? And then Umi's like, I don't really think I like you. No, I'm pretty sure I don't like you. Kisses him on the cheek, and then says, because I love you. And says that we don't have to kiss on the lips until you tell me that you like me. And I tell you this, guys, my reaction when it came to that, I was smiling, I was cheesing, because that was a very good. I love a good romance confession. Like in romance anime, I love a good romance confession. So when that happened, I was just so happy to see it. So that technically means that they're already gonna be together. Keep in mind, there's still 6 episodes left, so a lot of things could happen. I'm only talking about the first 6 episodes, but this has been crazy. And then we get episode 6, where we get more of Maki's backstory, him dealing with his parents' divorce, and then Umi's, like kind of being flirty with him. You ends up getting asked out, but she rejects the guy and tells him that she likes someone. Maki ends up meeting Nozumo, who tells him that he wants advice for you. And then they all start having a Christmas prep party, and Umi's kind of worried because she's going to meet the two girls that she had that confrontation with, where they were, they rejected her to go hang out with you. And I mean, it's just a very interesting story. But then they have like a whole thing where, like Maki ends up asking you to hang out on Christmas Eve. Umi says to wait for her. Umi says that she has plans, but Maki says that he'll wait for her. And then ends up finding out that they had plans, and she's gonna obviously join them. And then Nozumo ends up asking you out. You rejects him, and then Nozumo, after the rejection, is kind of talking to Maki about Umi, like warning him, like since the school festival, like she's been more happier, a lot of guys are more interested in her, and that if they want to be together, he really needs to make a decision, which ultimately leads him to go up to, like them hanging out at his place later on, and he full stops ask her if he wants to go see a movie with him, which is asking her on a date. So now that the date is confirmed, Umi's like, well, you're not going to be wearing the clothes that you have been on our next date. So they end up going to take him, like clothes shopping for some new clothes for the date. And as they're in the middle of the date, Maki ends up going to the bathroom. After coming out the bathroom, he ends up bumping into someone, and it ends up being his dad. And so that is where we are currently standing and currently left off, Umi meeting his dad. And the next episode, from what I know, is going to be the date, and I'm very excited for it. I'll probably do a whole finishing video about this, but I just wanted to talk about this anime because this anime has genuinely surprised me. It's been one of my favorite romance animes to watch, but I just had to talk about this real quick. So let me know what you guys' opinions are in the comments down below.